Please welcome to the stage and Amanda Clack, who's Head of Infrastructure at EY, but also President of RICS as well. So, Amanda.
Thanks very much, Richard. As RICS President, I picked three themes this year: infrastructure, cities, and the war for talent. Why? Well, we're seeking to build that infrastructure gap that was sort of set out at the start there, $57 trillion infrastructure gap through to 2030, to build effectively the cities of the future. 66% of the world's population, 6.9 billion people living in cities in just as soon as 2050. So for me, we have a lot to do in terms of the built environment. But it's actually the work that I did when I was chairing the RICS strategy group, which looked at our changing world, let's be ready, which looked at where do we need to be through to 2030. And war for talent was the number one thing that employers were basically saying was their major concern going forward. When you look at the big infrastructure build programme we have here in the UK, effectively we've got £410 billion worth of infrastructure to be built in the next 10 years. That's going to require an awful lot of people, and through that you're going to need skills. Yet we've actually got 430,000 people that are set to retire in this sector between 2010 and 2020. So for me, skills has to be a focus at the heart of that. I've been invited to join an all-parliamentary group for excellence in the built environment, which is specifically going to be looking at the Commission of Inquiry into Brexit and skills. And I'm also the chair of the Brexit Infrastructure Group, which was formed to establish to and ensure that government is well briefed and informed on the key issues that are affecting our industry. Number one on that list has to be skills. And there's a number of things that actually affect the skills area for us in the future in terms of construction. You know, we're a very cyclical nature of construction that's coming through. We have a very risk-adverse culture. Its demographic makeup is not conducive to skills and also the business model. And for me, Brexit just brings in another additional layer of complexity to the problem. In the long term, there's no doubt for me that the effective partnership between government and industry will really start to address the skills challenges. Yet in the short term, we do have a problem to actually deliver that major infrastructure programme that's been laid out. And I think we need to sort of think about the losses that happened in the recession, coupled with the lack of diversity and the ageing workforce, when we really start to think about what do we need to do. So we have yet to fully recover the 270,000 construction jobs that were lost in the last recession. And we have an ageing workforce, with 30% of our workforce within construction being over 50. So for me, we are at a skills cliff edge, with numbers of entrants also falling to offset those retiring. So thinking about that and the CITB figure that was mentioned there, so 230,000 new recruits being needed between now, 2016, and 2020, just to meet the expected construction demand. And that was perhaps before the 3 H's of Hinckley, Heathrow, and HS2. So we need to think about what the impact's going to be, particularly in terms of the different trades. Anecdotally, the majority of the plumbers are EU national, while the majority of electricians are UK nationals. So we need to think about that, because actually every project, a delay in terms of a shortfall of skills in one of those areas, will have a massive impact on the overall project. So we need to think about EU migrants in that context too. Now, the Office of National Statistics came up with 9%, 194,000 of the construction workers in the UK being EU nationals. But actually, it's very regionalised when you look across it, and particularly in London, 54% of construction workers working in London are from outside the UK. So it means that the impact of Brexit will be felt unevenly between the urban and rural communities. RICS and YouGov undertook a survey, and the results were quite stark. The results came in just October, so last month, and really started to think about 13 to 22-year-olds and what do they see of this industry. 41% of girls think that their gender will have a negative effect in terms of their career, compared to just 4% of boys. Role models are key, having a female prime minister to overcome gender equality in the workplace, according to almost half, 43% of those surveyed. We need to address pay gap issues, now mandatory. In our survey, 20% of young men said that they felt that they were going to be earning more in their career compared to women. And of those surveyed, 73% believe that attitudes and behaviours of CEOs and senior leaders are important in encouraging equal numbers of men and women. But our sector and our industry and our professions have a real mountain to climb when you find that 29% of girls see this sector as being men only. So some of the actions we need to take are very clear for me. We had a report, Building Inclusivity, Laying the Foundations for Success. It's the first report of its kind. It's based on the RICS Inclusive Employer Quality Mark. The analysis was done by EY. It's the first baseline of the sector by the sector. It looks across 6 key areas: leadership and vision, recruitment, staff retention, staff development, staff engagement, and continuous improvement. It seeks to look at what do we need to do to address those areas. The National Equality Standard run by EY is something that really starts to look at a baseline, again, of the sector, so to actually give that kite mark. We need to be thinking about those sorts of things in the context of what we're doing. So for me, it's not about tokenism, it's about taking action. We need to secure the rights of EU workers. We need to think about the skills and practices alongside cultural and technological changes. We need to educate the educators, which are the parents and teachers, looking to attract that next generation of talent in from our schools. We also need to have a new pathway of entry, postgraduate level, things like Buildforce that take people from different sectors and bring them into ours. And we need to secure the appropriate levels of apprenticeship funding. But essentially, we need to retain and develop the talent that we need within this sector. Thank you.
Amanda, thanks very much. It's interesting.